All right, people. This is a public service announcement, or more like a rant or a you better change your ways, addressed to all manufacturers and coders of video games that may use an anti-cheat program or the anti-cheat program creators themselves. Don't. Now, here, let me elaborate with that. Anti-cheat programs are designed specifically to prevent unfair advantage from when one human player plays against another human player, or in the case of it being some sort of competition, like how many PvE enemies can you kill in a certain time limit. Well, here's the problem with anti-cheat type programs. They request they require access to the operating system at a level lower, i.e., more control than the kernel itself. The problem with this is that there are many cases where these programs that have access that low do things that simply should not be allowed. Let me explain with that. When you're looking for a cheat program, what you're looking for is a pattern of reading and then editing some form of memory space. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be a program that is accessing another program to read its memory space, maybe doing some work with it to figure something out, and then pushing a write either directly back to that other program, that second program's memory space, overwriting its own code, its own variables, or it is pushing data to an external source. Now, programs like that are also debuggers. Most of the time in your release game, you don't need a debugger running. You just run the program and it works. However, the problem with anti-cheat programs is that they sort of assume that whenever you're running a game executable, you're always in a competitive player versus player type match. There are a lot of games out there whose primary focus is campaign or co-op, which has no competitive aspect. Now, assuming that that program that's running, that game that's running, is in a PvP mode, is a faulty assumption, right? And a lot of times when you're playing with friends, you may decide, hey, I want to play with this small group of friends. I set uh, my network settings in the game matchmaking to be friends only, and I boot up a cheat program because I want to do something silly with a friend. We both agreed. We're talking on Discord or some other chat program, and we decide to play a video game and to mess around with it, to do stupid things that weren't intended by the game developers using cheat programs. Let me ask you, when I have it limited to friends only, people I actively talk to and interact with, who know what I'm doing, who probably approved of it, why is the anti cheat even doing anything? Shouldn't it not be in an idle mode, not checking at all? And also, like, the way to catch cheats, literally all cheats, is to detect memory reads. Now, you can't exactly snoop If there's another device on the network that's snooping the same traffic going to your computer, and with point to point encryption, it's going to be difficult. But let's say hypothetically you have a second computer snooping memory reads, and you're writing to the control ports, the ports that control your mouse or your keyboard or your controller, the device that's actually inputting into the game. In order to create a perfect cheat, you would have to spend a lot of money on a second computer, the necessary network hardware to snoop the exact same data packets on a network going to your main computer. You would have to be able to real time parse that data in a hacked client that is not actually sending the client data back to the server. And then you would have to take that data that was snooped on the second computer and send it to a physical hardware emulator that takes inputs and shoots them out as if it looks exactly like a mouse and keyboard or a controller. That's thousands of dollars of hardware to cheat. And at that point, you deserve to get away with it because you spent a hell of a lot of money to do that. Though, if that particular person seems to be cheating on a regular basis, you can ban them. But banning them from being able to even run their computer, to even play the game at all, is not fair. Lifelong bans are not fair. Because here's an example that happens to me that is 100% clearly a case of an anti cheat doing something it is not supposed to, detecting anything that is not a cheat and doing something other than preventing you from continuing to cheat in a match. I recently got a copy of the Halo Master Chief Collection on Steam. It was actually something from my past. One of my sort of friends decided to buy it for me because we wanted to play together. We were playing the campaigns. We wanted to play cross-platform, so we left the anti-cheat enabled because for some reason you have to have the anti-cheat enabled to play the campaign cross-platform, which has no PvP aspect to it. So why does the anti-cheat need to run for campaign? Whatever. Lazy game developers not separating the anti-cheat into has to run on multiplayer, not on campaign. Sure, I get it. You're lazy. Really shouldn't be. Ruins players' tastes, as ruins players' legit players' enjoyment, as I'm about to explain. See, Windows sucks. We all know it. Windows will reboot without permission and explicitly ignore us telling it not to reboot. And it reboots for no reason sometimes. Sometimes there's updates that do not affect the kernel at all, that literally could be applied without a rebooting at all. All you have to do is say, okay, this program is actively using the update. Until you restart this program, the update is not fully applied. All other programs that use this service or feature will use the new copy, the updated copy. And then you can like close that program and reopen it at your leisure. No reboot required. This is how Linux has done it. In fact, they specifically have a window that pops up and says, updates have been applied, however, updates have been installed, however, they cannot be applied until these specific programs are restarted. And you're given a choice. That window pops up. You can minimize it and ignore it and continue to run your computer for as long as you need to. It will not close your program without permission, causing you to lose work. It will not reboot without permission, causing you to lose work. It will just sit there and wait until those programs are closed. And if you close them all manually yourself, it will it will then apply the update. And then it's happy. No hassle there. It waits for the user to tell it when it's time. And it even has a button that says close and attempt to reopen these programs. So literally, it will save the state of those programs that are actively hooking the updated APIs, and it will close them, update the APIs, and then open them again. And almost all the time that works. So yes, Windows sucks. So I run some programs specifically designed to compensate for problems. One of the problems is a blue screen of death error that literally shouldn't exist. It should not be possible for it to ever be triggered. It's called, it's described as page fault in unpaged area. Now, to anybody who doesn't understand what I'm talking about, the page file is virtual memory. It is an attempt for when you do not have a large amount of RAM, or you've filled your RAM with other processes. For things that don't actually need to be in high-speed RAM, like they're a TSR that sits there and does absolutely nothing until a certain time, probably like the alarm program in Windows. That doesn't need to be loaded. Your alarm doesn't need to be loaded until right before it goes off, right? So it sits there and waits for the time trigger. So the data that creates the audio, that part of the code doesn't need to be loaded. But the way programs load, that would have been loaded directly into RAM to cache it. So what Windows does, what Windows and, well, generally all OSs these days do, is they take processes that have not written to their RAM, writing specifically. Reads may not cause a trip. That's what the page fault part of the page fault thing means. It means a program has accessed a piece of memory in a read state that is sitting on a hard drive, or in some cases an SSD. SSDs actually probably work pretty well in that case, so long as you don't stuff your page file so full of data that's frequently written that you wear out the NAND flash cells. But I guess you could buy an Optane type module and use that for page file for enhanced endurance and delay. Whatever. Point is, Windows and all OSs use page file. The problem is, Windows decides kind of poorly what needs to go into the page file. Let's say I have let's say I have 100 Chrome tabs open. Something you can get into as an autistic person, opening a tab and then watching a video of YouTube, and then the end card shows you 2 or 3 different videos that you want to watch. You can't exactly say, well, play this one, but let me see this list later. So what you do is you open each one in a new tab. Well, you open all but one of them in a new tab. And then you click on the last one. Sure, you watch the next video. Sometimes you find one video at the end card, sometimes no videos. When you have no videos, you close the tab. And then the next tab is one of the other videos you asked for. So you keep doing this, and sometimes you end up with 100 or so tabs. Here's the thing though, each and every one of those tabs would try to autoplay a video, which is why autoplay should not exist until you initialize the video intentionally, at least for things like YouTube. I guess ads with autoplay are okay, even though they really, those kinds of ads are so intrusive that they shouldn't be allowed. But let's say you have a plugin to stop autoplay. Cool. Your YouTube video does not load. But that tab's using a couple hundred megabytes of memory, right? That memory is not used at all. The data that it's caching, the YouTube video that it loaded into the temp, which shouldn't really be stored in RAM at all, but sometimes is. Like, I have an Amazon Prime account and I watch a Prime video and I end up with a process that has 4 gigabytes of memory, which is clearly the tab I'm watching that is actively running is caching the entire video or several episodes, including ones that I'm not even watching right now that I've already watched that have not been released from RAM. So I have to refresh the page for it to clear out that temp data that doesn't need to be there. Those tabs tend to eat up some RAM that could actually just be dumped to the page file because it's going to be at least a half an hour before I have to go to that tab and load it up. And even then, it can load it up in the order the video plays. So you get a couple megabytes of site layout data, and then it loads up the file. That's what the page file is for. It's for programs that are not actively doing anything, that probably won't be doing anything for a long time, so do not need the low latency of directly being in memory. And of course, Windows being stupid and deciding, hey, I need to cache this data for this process instead of actually having this other process in memory. I have an SSD. I don't need to cache this data if I need the RAM for something else. Linux doesn't seem to do that. For some unknown reason, Windows is the only one who seems to decide, hey, this thing that doesn't need to be in RAM should be in RAM instead of this other thing that should be in RAM. Whatever. So I've got a program that compensates for that. Somebody on GitHub developed a program that literally just, you give it a process ID and it attempts a block read from every process on your computer. Yeah, it sounds a lot like a cheat program, or at very least a debugger. But it's not doing any writes, and whenever it encounters a process like an antivirus program, it throws an error. Protection is 1. Could not read block, protection is 1. Now, really, that program is poorly coded to handle that. It just keeps trying. What it should do is if it sees a protected process, it should just be like, no, I can't do this. It's protected. There's no point in continuing to try. Just terminate program so that my script can, launch on a non-protected process. This script, I don't know if I have it set to run as administrator or not, or if it like grandfathers in from my block starting program script, which runs a bunch of other scripts on my computer, starting up things like free file sync, so I can sync between my desktop and laptop. But the point is, it's a program that just scans through RAM and does read requests, which tricks Windows into reevaluating its assumptions over what should be in page file. Simple, right? Totally innocent, totally simple, and shouldn't need to exist, but does need to exist. Now, this program tends to have a little bit of annoyance when it comes to the specifically the anti-cheat called easy anti-cheat. So I have to stop my script and launch it again after I'm done playing a game with easy anti-cheat that I have to have enabled. That's okay. The way it crashes, though, shouldn't be possible. Because the way it crashes, it isn't cutting me out of the game. It isn't giving me it isn't causing the game to crash to desktop. It isn't booting me from the game server. What it's doing is causing the entire kernel to freeze. You heard me right. The entire kernel. This means my computer screens go black. Depending on what the audio chip was doing at the moment, it may decide to blare my ears with whatever gibberish it generates when it's stuck in whatever's left in its buffer. And then it does not reboot. It does nothing until I physically hard press the power button. Or in some cases, I actually have to pull the power cord or flick the little toggle switch on the back of the power supply to physically remove power from the computer. That shouldn't happen. But you want to know something funny about that? The only time that ever happens is one, after more than a week of my computer running, meaning cosmic rays have bit flipped something in my RAM that eventually causes it to, well, actually blue screen. It never just locks up like that, except for when I'm playing a game. Never, literally never, will my computer crash that way unless I'm playing a game. It's not always an anti-cheat game. Sometimes it's just a really shittily coded game. But the point is, I have narrowed it down. I even tried uninstalling Rivatuner Statistics Server because I like seeing my FPS and frame time in games that don't have that built in. I uninstalled that, thinking, yeah, maybe that's part of the problem. People say Rivatuner causes all kinds of problems. So I uninstalled it. Guess what happened? Same exact crash. I closed that little script. A little more stable, runs for an hour or two. Same exact crash. What's going on? What program is left? I have no programs left that should be tripping easy anti-cheat. So then me, being me, looked into if I could launch without easy anti-cheat. Couldn't play cross-platform, but one of my friends had a copy of the game that was on PC as well, and we could play cross-platform without easy anti-cheat. Played for several hours, got tired, closed the game manually. No crash. Longer than it has ever run was when easy anti-cheat was disabled. Now remember what I said about that process scanner. It encounters a process and it says protection is 1. Mostly it only shows up on antivirus programs. But think about that for a second. That process has a way to tell the kernel that no other program should be able to read its memory. Writing memory is a whole nother thing, but he can't even read it. So Windows itself, the Windows kernel itself, has the most effective anti-cheat built in. And it is setting a single bit flag. This process needs to have its memory space protected. No reads, no writes, nothing. Why do anti-cheat programs exist if Windows has it built in? And I'm pretty sure Linux and Mac have to have the same thing for antivirus. So all your game has to do is it has to tell Windows when it is entering a PvP or competitive match that it has to set that flag. That flag being set will cause any program attempting to hook into it, other than the program intended to hook into it, meaning the game itself, to lose access. Simple as that. So anti-cheat programs just don't need to exist. Literally all of them rendered irrelevant by something built into Windows. Anti-cheat should not exist. And finally, let's take a little bit of a detour here in terms of anti-cheat being enabled for a game, just for everything. I'm in the menu of the Halo Master Chief Collection. I'm downloading a campaign or a multiplayer thing. And, I'm downloading something. I don't want it to crash during downloading. It shouldn't. I'm not playing in a match, so anti-cheat shouldn't trip, right? Why does it run? Maybe it's not doing anything. Maybe it is actually waiting for you to get into game when it's actually loading a world. Maybe there is a way to do that. I don't know. But, it shouldn't do anything at that point. Sitting in the menu, no crash, nothing. I think, I'm not sure if I remember right, but I think one of the times when I was trying to play that game, the Halo Master Chief Collection, with Easy Anti-Cheat, the same crash happened in the menu. That shouldn't be possible. Easy Anti-Cheat shouldn't be scanning when you're in a menu. You're not in a match. You're sitting in a menu, editing some settings. No world loaded. Why is it doing anything? Like, doing anything at all? Good question, right? And then here's another example of where anti-cheat just shouldn't exist. Let's say you're playing the Halo campaign. Friendly fire, okay, friendly fire, whatever. But it's not competitive, right? And maybe you just kill your friend because he stole your weapon. Or you kill somebody because they stole your weapon and you wanted that weapon. And you take it, they respawn right there, and they get a different weapon because you're too lazy to chat. Cheating wouldn't matter there. You just blasted them to get a weapon. Why would cheating to have like infinite damage to insta kill them even matter? That's the only time I could think that a player would actually fire at another player in co-op. Why at a point where a cheat would ever help a player versus player interaction in a player versus enemy exclusive campaign. So let me ask you, why do we have anti-cheat at all for player versus enemy? No PvP, no anti-cheat. That's how it should be, right? But if you're going to be lazy about it, then, you're running a game. You say, I want to run this game with mods and or with difficulty editor programs. I understand I will not be able to play with matchmaking, only with friends or LAN. And then the game just, launches with the protected flag not set. Or let's say I want to play matchmaking, launch with the protected flag set. Problem solved. Let me ask you, Windows already does this. Why does Easy Anti-Cheat exist? Windows has probably done this for longer than I can know, but I only noticed this when I got this program to deal with Windows 10 being stupid. Anti-cheat programs that are not built into functionality that Windows already has, that OSs in general always have, should not exist. I welcome constructive reasoning in the comments that can explain to me why you think I'm wrong. Please give me reasons, database justifications over why anti cheat programs are anything but a waste of effort.